Good evening, and welcome back to Gain TV. Today is another episode with my friend and partner, Mr. Gustavo Mbala. And it's important here to remind that this gentleman is an alumni of Stanford, a four times Olympian track runner. So it's very important to put things in the perspective. My friend, it's always a pleasure to have you back on this show. It's always a pleasure to have you as a co-host of this show.
Mhm.
And no telling how much, man, how much your brother here love you and love the
Likewise,
work that you do in the community. Welcome
likewise.
back, my friend.
I like the way I like your look today too. You're getting the upgrade on the wardrobe.
It's hard to keep up with somebody like you.
With the
You know,
Joneses.
so
I got you.
it's hard. I try my best, man. I try my best.
You're
I
succeeding.
try my
And
best.
in all seriousness, too, any of the accomplishments that I've had in life, whether it's Stanford Olympics, there's no way you can do it by yourself. So I want to thank all the many teachers, coaches, friends, competitors. You can't do that stuff alone. And anyone who thinks they can are delusional. So I want to thank and give tribute to all the people who have helped me in my life then and who are helping me in my next chapter of my life now, many of whom you know already.
Absolutely, man. It's important. It's important. Them teacher, man. The teachers, they do a lot, and sometimes we just forget that without them, we won't be the men that we are.
Mhm.
So good show. I think we're gonna have a good show today, man. We're gonna have a good show tonight. First of all, I want us to start with Kathy Hochul. She used to be sworn as the new New York first female governor,
Mhm.
and I think it's important for us to listen to her, and then probably I know you have something to say about that.
Sure.
You already says a lot about the former governor.
Mhm.
I know that was a little disappointment, but now we have a new one. So let listen to her. She's sworn in today, and listen to what she had to say.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kathy Hochul, I, Kathy Hochul, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I'll support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge my duties, that I'll faithfully discharge my duties of the office of Governor of the State of New York, of the office of Governor of the State of New York, to the best of my abilities, so help me God. So help me God. So this is an emotional moment for me, but it is one that I prepared for, and I'm so looking forward to continuing the work we have to do. To that end, I spoke with President Biden last night to talk about a number of issues. He pledged his full support to my administration in anything we need. Particularly, I thanked him for the support we've received from FEMA and others in terms of cleaning up after Henri and how we were prepared, and I'm going to continue assessing the situation. I do want to thank the people whose lives were disrupted, as well as those who responded not just to that crisis, but those who continue to fight on the front lines as we fight this deadly pandemic. I also want to thank the hundreds of thousands of state workers who I have such respect for, and I look forward to letting them know that I will represent them with my heart and soul as well. They are the face of government in many, many communities, and I have my utmost respect for all of them.
So, Gustavo, you noticed that she didn't thank her former boss.
Mhm.
It's just because of the fact that she don't want to associate herself publicly with him.
Yeah, I think it's also it's time to turn a new chapter. And anytime you give recognition or acknowledge the past, whether it's past deeds or past misdeeds, or in this case, a past governor, I think for those of us who are forward thinking, Malik, it's important to thank everyone around that may have been impacted, that it was impacted directly or indirectly by the actions of the governor, both in the good and the bad. But I think it's also a way for her to say, hey, I'm the new sheriff in town. And she, in high heels, and she went right away to, from what I understand, appointed 2 women in high
Yeah.
positions. And I think it's long overdue. The state of New
Long
York
overdue. Yeah.
should have elected a governor long, long ago. And I'm glad that this day has arrived, not only for myself, but for my 2 beautiful daughters.
Absolutely. You mentioned your 2 beautiful daughters. I have a daughter myself. You were one of these guys that came on this show and said the governor Cuomo has to resign, and you
Yes.
were clear and pristine in your you know your statement. It was direct, and I did appreciate you to just to go forward, knowing your position. You were one of these people that admire his father. Their
And I
father
put,
was an honorable man.
and I put it in writing as well. I had written earlier in the day in English, Spanish, and French, so that nothing was lost in translation as to my very strong feelings that the governor's behavior was inappropriate. And I think that someone of his stature and standing, as well as his knowledge as the political arena and the political theater involved, that it was an embarrassment for him to try to cling on to power because he is no Donald Trump and Donald Trump is no Governor Cuomo.
Yes. And what do you say about this kind of disappointment? It looks like people, especially the victims, because we're talking about at least 11 people that came forward.
Yeah.
But there's one lady that says she was disappointed because it seems to her that the governor was resigning not because he was apologizing to this woman. He was resigning because he didn't want to slow down the government, to slow down the New York, the administrative in New York. So, do you think Governor Cuomo should have done a little bit more in terms of reaching out to these people that still probably suffer from I don't know if humiliation, because if you have your boss touching you in any kind of way, you never know what's going on in a woman's mind when this kind of stuff happen.
Well,
Your thought?
I would think that Governor Cuomo and his talented brother Chris Cuomo, who is both media savvy, intelligent, and a lawyer, would have perhaps given his brother advice. I don't know. I'm not privy to their internal conversations, but I would hope that he would have exhibited more humility. Politicians are kind of a funny breed. You put yourself out there, put your family out there for all sorts of things to be rummaging through your past and present. And you hope that when all is said and done, on balance, that you've done more good than bad. And unfortunately, sometimes you're remembered by the last few acts that you may have done. I hope that Governor Cuomo is able to heal, get the help that he needs, because I think that kind of behavior is borderline criminal, as well as some type of psychological defect when you think about it. And I hope that his family will continue to rally support. I wish the new governor, Hochul, the best of success. She can count on my support. I don't want anyone to fail. And she probably thought that she'd get into this position by other means, but she's here now, and I'm sure that she'll make the most of it. And I wish her luck. And I wish all of the women that she hires and all the men that she hires and all the people of New York that they take a big bite out of that big apple and do some good things.
Absolutely. So you think I mean Governor Cuomo's brother Chris Cuomo? You think he was smart enough to really step back for minutes and let his brother deal with this issue by himself, or he did what any brother should have done. I mean, just to try to step in and maybe help his brother. Do
Yeah,
you
I think
think that was a lost cause, or
I
that
think
was not appropriate for him to do what he did, was starting to do?
Yeah, it's always a conflict. And anytime you have a high profile family like the Cuomo's, they know the rules of engagement. They know the appearance of impropriety. I don't think that he used Mr. Cuomo, that is Chris, used CNN as a platform. I do know that some of the higher ups did speak to him and asked him to step back. But I know that the loyalty runs deep within the Cuomo family, and I have friends who are close to them. As you know, she was married. Governor Cuomo was married to a Kennedy, and some of the people that I knew from the Kennedy were back in LA. And so it's just an interesting dynamic. Anytime you have a fall from grace, you'll find out who your friends really are and your family. And I'm glad that at least that he has that network of family who are there to support him, because so many of us do not have that.
Absolutely. And you think this all of this is just not behind the governor, because it looks like the investigation was still going.
Yeah, oh, of
Although
course.
he stepped down, they were still investigating, trying to find out exactly any possibility that he can end up in jail.
I don't know. It's very difficult. Sometimes these high profile folks, they have such deep relationships, and I always believe that no one's above the law, and I firmly believe that. And whether you're president or former president, you see how a lot of former African presidents end up in prison, or in some cases die of COVID, as the ex-president of Chad died today in COVID while in jail. Uh, I think it's important for the evidence to lead where it may, the facts to lead where they may, and that Governor Cuomo, with as much strength as he did in trying to cling on to office, mount a vigorous defense to prove his innocence. Not to say he didn't do anything, but to prove his innocence in a court of law.
Absolutely. So, what kind of message do you think that send to the entire country? Because it looks like. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about a message. What message? What kind of message do you think was that the Democrat have sent across the nation? Because we tend to be, now that the Democratic Party is more and more, is open to moderate people. All of these people with very open mind people,
Mhm.
and it's a lot of young people that cannot, and the new generation of Democrats that do not tolerate this kind of behavior, as opposed to the Republican, our friend across the aisle.
Mhm.
We've seen the president saying some stuff and still get away with it. It looks like the Democrats or do not tolerate, or maybe this is a time as well, because in the past a lot of Democrats did get away with the kind of behavior, but now it looks like it's not acceptable in the Democratic Party to do that kind of stuff and then get away with it. What do you think about that?
I,
That comparison.
I think this locker room behavior, and frankly, I don't know of any locker rooms that really engage in this kind of behavior, but this crude, almost elite, privileged disposition that some leaders have, thinking that they can get away with anything. It's always amazing too that it comes down to sex, sexual innuendos, sexual comments that seem to bring men down. And I'm just wondering why we can't control ourselves and exhibit a certain amount of restraint. And I do believe the women. I believe their claims, and I hope that they are able to have their day in justice. But the message being sent, I think, by this generation of Democrats is that we're not going to tolerate this behavior. We can't control what other people on the other side of the aisle will do, but we can control what we can do and what we will permit. And so I applaud those people who are came out very forcefully, as you saw President Biden did, and eventually Mr. Schumer and Mr. Gillibrand, two senators from New York, did. And I think that Mr. Cuomo, who we all knew had ambitions for president at some point, that's why he had the daily briefings with regard to COVID. And let's not forget, there were some improprieties regarding the COVID deaths involving nursing homes that I think should also be unearthed. But I have no personal animosity towards Governor Cuomo. I wish him well, and I hope that future leaders, whether here or in other parts of the world, realize that you need to leave the stage when you need to leave the stage.
The Democrats are harder on their leadership, or than the Republican.
I think that the Democrats in general don't tolerate that kind of. There's a certain kind of cannibalism sometimes among the Democrats, but I think that they realize that there's a difference between right and wrong. And I think people who engage in this kind of behavior and try to excuse away and say it was just a one-time thing, there's not a pattern of behavior. I think one gross and inappropriate act is enough for at least someone to be censured. And you usually find in these kinds of cases, Malik, there's a history. Somewhere along the line, you'll hear about other people who are coming out of the woodwork. So I'm always try to exercise patience when you hear about one case, because there's usually a cavalcade of cases that come down the pipeline. I think there are people who didn't want to come forward because of their own concerns. And so that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah, it looks like our friend Gustavo is having some connection difficulties. I'm going to bring him back.
I'm here.
Gustavo, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, now it's better. It's clear now.
Great.
Yeah. I was just thinking Democrats are kind of harder on the people, on their leadership, as opposed to the Republican. And the recent event that we have, whatever they call the local talk, you saw how the president get away. President Trump did get away with it. But I'm glad to be a part of the Democrat Party, because you know, the fact that there's some value with sending clear message that this is not going to be acceptable. Because if you're a leader, you are not only representing your people, but you have to hold to the highest standards. So I do, like you said, both of us, we love Governor Cuomo, but the behavior was not acceptable. Look, today we I don't want to take away from the fact that the lady, the governor just sworn on today, and it's very important to try and understand what kind of a leadership she will bring to New York. And I'm glad also that for the first time we have a woman to lead to lead New York in that capacity. It was about time.
Yes.
And I missed the fact that who did she pick for lieutenant governor?
I'm not sure, but I do know she did appoint two women to high-ranking positions, and I obviously have a strong attachment to New York. My mother lives in New York, my brother, my nieces and nephew. I have an aunt, and we used to live in New York, so I have a strong affinity towards New York. And it was New York where we first landed when my father became ambassador in 1969. So we lived in Mount Vernon, New York, and so I'm always concerned about the politics as well as the pros that you find in the great state of New York.
Politics and pros. I like that. So you think she clearly from the get-go, I see the distance. Didn't mention the governor, and because before she even swore in, it looks like people were already accusing her to be Governor Cuomo 2.0. So I can see her, from the get-go, telling people this is going to be a new administration. Any type of behavior like, in the past won't be tolerated. Do you think she's going to bring something new to the table in terms of leadership?
Well, I think if to anyone who is advising Madam Governor Hochul, I think the best way to respond to the Governor Cuomo scenario is just say she was practicing social distancing from the governor, and that now that he's in literally and figuratively, he's now a member of the private sector and a private citizen. And I know that she has her own agenda. It's unfortunate sometimes as a lieutenant governor, you oftentimes are forced into the background, but she's prepared, as she said, she's prepared her whole lifetime for this moment. And I wish her success. And if there's anything I can do to help with regard to advice, recruitment, or giving her some insight, I'd be more than happy to at any point from this day forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, man, I think it's about time now that we change gear. Let's go to the news. Today, of course, that was news as well.
Yeah.
But the White House is still trying to make sense about what's going on in Afghanistan. And journalists will not stop, questioning, their plan, what this is all about. And you saw the Republican leadership keep pushing in terms of now they have a big excuse now, because Pelosi with infrastructure, a bill, now this is the reason not to be focused on. I saw some of them saying instead of focusing on evacuation, bringing the troop and our allies and friends and interpreters, back home, we need to focus on that rather than trying to focus on the infrastructure bill. So that is the big excuse now in Washington D.C., especially when it comes to the GOP. So what I'm going to do is I want to play a clip. The press secretary, I think she was giving some answers to questions from the journalists. So we're going to listen to that, and I'm going to listen to
a lot of ground that we will
your analysis based on that. So
be covering. I know a number
listen.
of you have been asking this as well. And yesterday evening, the president spoke, or last night, I should say, the president spoke to New York Governor Kathy Hochul prior to her being sworn in as governor of New York. He congratulated her on her new job and historic role as the next governor of New York. They talked of their shared time at Syracuse University, and Governor Hochul told the president she wanted to visit Washington to meet with him to discuss infrastructure and how to work together to improve the lives of New Yorkers. The president looks forward to hosting her at a future date. As you know, she also joined a call on Saturday with other Northeastern governors, with the president, the FEMA administrator, and Homeland Security advisor Liz Sherwood-Randall to discuss Tropical Storm Henri and the federal response to help mitigate the storm's impact. With that, Amar, go ahead.
Before we go to questioning, because she's going to be, giving some answers to question from the press. I don't know if you have any comments on the questions.
Well, Jen Psaki is a pro, and one of the things that I'm also impressed with is that she made it very clear that she only wants to be in the press shop for about a year and move on. I think that Ms. St. Pierre, an African American, will probably become the first among the first or second African American to be the press secretary. So I believe that and this was prior to the whole Afghanistan scenario that Jen Psaki had talked about, wanting to only spend about a year because she has young kids, married, and she's kind of gone through this rodeo before. I think it's time to let someone, a person of color, particularly this case, a woman, to continue, because women seem to rule the world. Like they say, black magic is all over the place, and I love it. With regard to Afghanistan, I think that the president and his team have a real problem on their hands. Everyone's going to offer their advice. Every advice is going to sound better than the next. I know that the previous administration, sometimes decisions were based upon the last person that the president talked to. I think in this case, being that President Biden is a seasoned veteran politician, that he'll use his intuition, his instinct, and listen to his advisors before rendering a decision. But this is not the time for knee-jerk reactions, but it's also not the time to sit by in the sidelines waiting for events to unfold on the ground, which appear to be very fluid and dangerous, particularly around Kabul airport.
Great. A couple of Afghanistan questions. First, on a Taliban spokesman said today that the group would bar Afghans from accessing the roads leading to the airport to allow foreigners to pass. And I guess for evacuation efforts, what does this mean for Afghans who assisted and can't get through now? What are you going to be? Does this effectively cut off those Afghans from being evacuated?
No, that is not how you should read it. One, I should note we have been in direct contact, not just with American citizens, but with SIV applicants, special immigrant visa applicants, and Afghans whose departure we are facilitating about how and when to come to the airport. And our expectation, which we have also conveyed to the Taliban, is that they should be able to get to the airport. It is also true, and I know this may be some of the confusion out there, that there are a number of Afghans who may not qualify for these programs. And we've seen over the past 9 days, a rush of people attempt to come to the airport. We certainly understand that, but that also creates a security risk and one that we have great concern about. So to be clear, individuals who are eligible for special immigrant visas or others who we are helping facilitate their evacuation and their departure, we are in touch with them or working to be in touch with them about how and when to come to the airport, as well as American citizens, as you well know, and we expect that they will be able to reach the airport.
And, sorry, just the Afghan roads leading to the airport.
Now, that question is very important, and you can tell that all of these days the GOP leadership been pounding on that. They don't believe that the administration is doing the right thing. They don't believe they're doing the right job. They don't believe that they are moving fast enough. So, and on the other side, it looks like internationally, our friend and the allies are demanding that Biden, um, you know, have more time to accomplish his job. So, do you think, when she said people getting to the airport through all those checkpoints that you already know,
Yeah.
and chances are this Taliban, you and me, we on this show, we already kind of dissect, trying to understand how the same people that are saying there's no extension in terms of timing, but yet we getting some parallel information from on the ground saying that there's people that still get killed.
Yeah.
And there's no measurement when it comes to who do they let go, because they have a lot of information about the interpreters and all kind of stuff. Do you think this is going to be a clear, a transparent operation where we can trust the Taliban to let these people go through through those checkpoints?
Well, as to your first comments, I think that with regard to the GOP, it's not breaking news that they'll take a contrarian view and that they'll wish. And in many ways, it's almost like they're wishing for the president's failure in order to try to capitalize it and raise money. But with regard to the Democrats, I believe that I will continue to say that President Biden and all that he's doing is methodical, and that it's important for us to give him time, but it can't be time in which people are chasing down airplanes, throwing their babies at random people, or in some cases, falling from the sky, as it did during 9/11 when people jumped out of the buildings to avoid the smoke. Those scenes are horrific, but it also tells you what people are willing to do in order to live. No one wants to die. No one's looking for martyrdom. And I think that the president and his team are doing their best. And I think that they should continue to be out there in front of the press. It's good to have a vibrant press holding you accountable. None of these people in positions of power, some of them elected, some of them selected by President Biden, are thin-skinned. They know what they signed up for. And this is just one of perhaps many other challenges that this administration will face. They face it early on, and hopefully they'll face it head on. And in the end, hopefully more people's lives will be saved rather than lost, and that the special immigrant visas be applied in a way that's appreciated by those who gave up so much in order to help the Americans during this 20-year campaign in which so much American blood and treasure, as well as Afghani blood and treasure, was lost. I hope that we can turn the chapter on this, just as we did in other parts of the world.
Absolutely. So do you think the president need more time?
I think he needs a little more time, but there's not a whole lot of time that can be spared. I mean, when you see those images, the Kabul airport, and think of the things that we don't even see, that's just what makes the TV. Can you imagine what we don't see? What we don't see. And so I'm not about sensationalism. I'm about solving problems. I think that they need to somehow have American troops help in managing that situation.
Can we solve this? My thing is, this question is that can we solve this to be reasonable? When you see all the chaos, do you think it's reasonable? And you see the chaos, these are the people that we already know or at the airport. This is, I'm not even talking about people that's still behind the checkpoints.
Yeah.
So when I pose that question, does the president need more time? If the answer is yes or maybe no, then the second question would be, how this gonna work?
Yeah, when you're negotiating with the Taliban, I understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand. But let's be
Mr. Hunter,
real.
yesterday we play a video where the Taliban will say we want allow more time.
Red
So
light.
how are we gonna solve this equation?
But let's also be real here. That Taliban person was probably either involved with the meeting of the CIA director William Burns, who met with Taliban spokespeople at the highest levels, and at the Taliban, he had discussions, private discussions, the last 24 to 48 hours. So sometimes what these guys say publicly doesn't mirror what's going on behind the scenes privately. But the situation had deteriorated enough so much that the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, Mr. Burns, a former and seasoned State Department official, made his way out there to talk to Taliban and see what he can do to somehow calm the waters on this very, very turbulent time in that part of the world.
Absolutely. So I don't know your prediction. You think there's a possibility that the Taliban will back off and change, give Biden more time?
No, I don't think so at all. And I'm not in the prediction game, but I can see where the weight of the evidence, given the history of the Taliban and what they've done in terms of ravaging their own, I cannot see them in a moment of reasonableness, because they look upon it as backing down or succumbing. But negotiations are about compromising, giving and take. I think because there's been 20 years of built-in resentment and a desire for the occupiers to leave, that it couldn't be any day sooner for them to leave. There are other parts of the world that are occupied that some people might consider, whether it's the Israel-Palestinian issue, which is a very hot-button issue. But I think that anytime you have people who are viewed as outsiders who have come into your country for reasons not quite certain, you're going to have Taliban and some of the sympathizers to the Taliban who will do whatever they can to exact revenge, which they believe is long overdue. I hope that calmer heads will prevail. I hope that Mr. Burns and his team, as well as President Biden and his team, are able to talk some sense into some folks. But given the fact that we had a smooth-talking Taliban spokesperson, who I think was just as violent as any of the guys you see there running around the streets of Kabul and the airport, I'm not optimistic. But I will still hold on to hope, because hope, as you know, brings about change.
Absolutely.
To allow foreigners to pass. And I guess for evacuation efforts, what does this mean for Afghans who assisted and can't get through now? What are you going to be? Does this effectively cut off those Afghans from being evacuated?
No, that is not how you should read it. One, I should note we have been in direct contact, not just with American citizens, but with SIV applicants, visa applicants, and Afghans whose departure we are facilitating, about how and when to come to the airport. And our expectation, which we have also conveyed to the Taliban, is that they should be able to get to the airport. It is also true, and I know this may be some of the confusion out there, that there are a number of Afghans who may not qualify for these programs. And we've seen over the past 9 days, a rush of people attempt to come to the airport. We certainly understand that, but that also creates a security risk, and one that we have great concern about. So to be clear, individuals who are eligible for special immigrant visas or others who we are helping facilitate their evacuation and their departure, we are in touch with them or working to be in touch with them about how and when to come to the airport, as well as American citizens, as you well know, and we expect that they will be able to reach the airport.
And just as a moment of perspective, can you imagine if the previous administration had been given this scenario? Look how they handled COVID. Can you imagine the previous administration, what they would have done?
Yeah, I mean, with COVID, I was scared because the way I was scared to drink, bleach, man.
Yeah.
When the when, when former presidents were talking about drinking bleach
Yeah.
to kill the COVID virus, it freaked out of I was freaking out.
Yeah.
And I'm glad the situation when you have a tough situation and the situation is being handled with class and that it tells you about the leadership that we have today.
Yeah.
And you were right to point out that these people were really precocious. They're taking all the measures needed to make sure that we have the best results in
And
the end.
and not to give too much credence, but we also have to hold the previous administration, particularly Stephen Miller, who is an interesting cat. He
It is.
really some of these really restrictive immigration policies. He was the architect behind it. And here's a little kid from Santa Monica who I'm not sure how he got to the White House, but he got there and he did a lot of damage. And I hope that for those of us who are immigrants who have been proud to contribute to the United States of America, I just hope that some of these policies from the previous administration will be undone, corrected, and that people can, like you and I, Malik, have a big part of living out our American dreams.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that Steve Miller have caused a lot of damages when it comes to foreign affairs. And you in your previous comments, you mentioned Israel. This one of our best allies. But in this time, and some GOP leaders were talking about, oh, you know what? We don't have anybody in the Middle East where we can use our base we can use the space as a base. What about Israel?
Yeah,
This is a country that we always defend as being a sister country or a brother country, whatever you might call it. But this is a time where you can see their presence as well. I didn't see a lot of I don't know, maybe behind the scenes, but openly we talk more about our friend in Europe. But what about Saudi Arabia? What about Israel? What are they doing to help
well,
out in
with
this
regard to
situation?
Israel, with regard to Israel, as you know, I have deep affection for the state of Israel. My grandfather was a German Jew. I have deep affection for the state of Israel. But however, there are times when you need to stop exporting munitions to countries and start exporting talent to avoid situations that are taking place in Kabul and Afghanistan. With regard to Saudi Arabia, all I can say is Jamal Khashoggi was murdered, and the U.S. still does business with Saudi Arabia. And he sometimes, and I support a thorough investigation of the death of Jamal Khashoggi. However, I think that sometimes, unfortunately, in politics, it's about risk over reward and or cost benefit analysis. Jamal Khashoggi was murdered. He was a permanent resident of the United States, like myself. And I hope that someday that he and his family will get justice beyond what we've seen so far.
Absolutely.
Sorry, the Afghan or the Taliban are saying that they don't want Afghans to leave. That now they want these Afghans to stay. That they're needed to rebuild the country.
Before she answer, the Taliban don't want the Afghans to leave. They want them to stay and build a country. You build them that?
Oh boy, these guys! It's almost like open mic night in Kabul at the Kabul bar. All I can say is that the music and words of the Taliban have been one of vengeance, violence, chaos, death, and intimidation. And until those music and words change, which they haven't changed for a number of decades, anything they say, I don't take with a grain of salt at all.
Again, our expectation and what we will continue to convey directly through a range of channels we have is that the individuals, the special immigrant visa applicants, those who are eligible, those who we are facilitating their departure will be able to reach the airport.
And on your the statement that you just put out about a half hour ago about the August 31st deadline and sticking to it, The president has, from allies, both here at home and abroad, have wanted him to push that deadline back some. And also critics of the president are speaking out very strongly on his decision. What do you say to those who are criticizing the president by sticking to this deadline? It amounts for him to capitulating to the Taliban.
Well, first, and I think I'm just going to read the statement. I know a number of you have seen it, but just in case, because I think it has quite a bit of additional context that is not exactly aligned in he stuck with the deadline as you just conveyed. During a meeting this morning with the G7 leaders, the president conveyed that our mission in Kabul will end based on the achievement of our objectives. That is a key component there.
A key component.
The achievement of the objectives.
That key component is very important. Mm-hmm. So these August 31 or 31st deadline, do you think because first when you see your analysis is that the Taliban is you cannot trust these people.
No.
And there is a chance that just to show the world that they mean business, they probably won't accept to change the deadline. Or, like you said, there's talks that there's behind closed door diplomacy, and I agree with you. But this equation is still in the mind of many Americans, including myself. How, if Biden need more time because the European ally, are pressing, because knowing the situation on the ground, this is not something they will be doing in 2 weeks. Or even a month. This is going to take some time.
Yeah. Usually, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Usually what happens in these kind of scenarios, Malik, let's just be honest, behind the scenes in politics. I think that Taliban leadership was probably offered a significant amount of money. And if there is a deadline extension, it would be because the leadership of the Taliban was offered significant amount of money.
And they need money, right? They really need money to run the country.
Well, sure they do. But I think it's unfortunate that it comes down to, money. And I think that if there is a deadline extension, and I don't know if that's going to happen, I'm sure that there were some promises made by key people who often work in the shadows and who are given those, and whose instructions were given to them by the president, because you very well couldn't have the president sitting shoulder to shoulder with the Taliban. The people who sat and looked at these Taliban face to face were speaking on behalf of the president of the United States, who I'm sure made all sorts of behind the scenes offers. And hopefully it says, remember, he was a senator, so he's all about bargaining. Now the people on the other side, the Taliban, aren't folks that we often have over for dinner, but you need to talk to bad people, whether they're Taliban or African dictators. You need to talk to them. Dialogue is important. Monologue is not.
Absolutely. Yeah, but you know what? I don't know about what's going to happen to American principle. Remember, it's been said, and you study international relation. America usually say we don't negotiate with terrorists. Now we're in maybe the crossroad where that might happen this time.
Yeah, there's always flexibility in policies. It's a case by case scenario, and often what people say publicly doesn't mirror what happens privately. They know, how can you come out and say, oh yes, we had a 1 hour meeting with a high-ranking Taliban officials, and we came to. You can't have those kind of discussions in public because people would lose their minds. And so you hope with quiet diplomacy, with carrot and sticks, you offer them something, they offer you something, and hopefully at some point there's an impasse. But this deadline is fast approaching, and we have about a week, and I'm sure this will be a week filled with all sorts of negotiations and machinations on the part of people who are stakeholders. I just hope that people do not forget that you have the men, women, and children in Afghanistan who are the real stakeholders in the future of that country.
Absolutely.
He confirmed we are currently on pace to finish by August 31st. As you all know, in the last 9 days, we have effectively helped evacuate 57,000 people, and that has continued to escalate the number of people we're getting out each day. And our focus continues to be on evacuating Americans who want to come home, third country nationals, and Afghans who are our allies during the war. He also made clear that with each day of operations on the ground, we have added risk to our troops with increasing threats from ISIS-K, and that completion of the mission by August 31st depends on continued coordination with the Taliban, including continued access for evacuees to the airport. In addition, as we noted in the statement, he asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timeline should that become necessary. So I think there's quite a bit of context in there, including the threat from ISIS-K, which is quite real and one that we are tracking and monitoring very closely from our national security and intelligence teams, to the continued cooperation of the Taliban in as it relates to getting American citizens and our key allies on the ground to the airport. And the third, of course, is ensuring that we have contingency should they be needed. So I think those are pretty important caveats in the reporting. Go ahead.
If you do have to adjust the time.
Anything you want to add to that?
They're giving themselves space to negotiate space in case a scenario 1 doesn't work out, or in case scenario 2 doesn't work out, or scenario 3. It's all about giving yourself some wiggle room, and that's all. In her answers, she's allowing for the president to be able to pivot should something disastrous come about, or should something good come about. It's all about giving yourself a little bit of space, democratic and otherwise.
Now, do you think the GOP concerns here is how long this process is going to take, or bringing the American people and their ally, including interpreters, quicker? Because it seems to me that they're trying to undermine what President Biden is doing, knowing that such an operation won't take just one or 2 days or 1 or 2 weeks.
That.
But
looking towards
acting
they're looking towards the 2022 elections too. Let's be real. They want to use this as a club, a billy club against the administration, saying, "Look what happened here." They're raising money off the blood and treasure of people who are dying. The Republicans, as far as I'm concerned, don't want him to succeed because it would make them look bad, and that's it. If Joe Biden were to, if this had been a smooth transition and there's no chaos, they would have said something about the weather. They would have said something about the fact that more Americans should have been able to leave. There's always going to be a scenario in this role play that they won't be happy with, but we have to hope that more good is done than bad. That's all you can do.
Timeline, how long are you talking about?
I'm not going to get ahead of any contingency plans that are drawn up by the State Department and the Defense Department. As you all know, the president has been meeting and attended and participated in briefings with his national security team once a day, sometimes twice a day, is in constant and regular contact, and I expect we'll get some updates in short order.
And when do you need to start pulling troops out of the Kabul airport to meet the August 31 target?
It's a great question, Steve. I just don't want to get into operational details that are under the purview of the Department of Defense. Go ahead. But you are correct. I will note that it would not be, there would have to be time in advance of the 31st or time in advance of whatever the date is in order to do that. But they can give you the operational details. Go ahead.
So does that mean that the evacuations will stop before the actual 31st? So then there is time to get the troops and their machinery and weaponry out of there?
Good question. That is a good question.
Yeah.
So, giving the deadline, 31st. So when we hit that deadline, what happened? Let's see that let assume that there's no negotiation about the time. Let's assume that the Taliban are serious about there's no more time after the 31st. So when we hit that deadline, what are we going to be doing? The Taliban are going to have the responsibility to keep the American people in the country, because his argument was yesterday. His argument was that if America don't leave on, and including the allies, if they don't leave on time, I mean on the 31st, that means the occupation to the country continue, and then there will be consequences for that. Here's my question. The question I'm posing here is, let's see that let assume that on the 31st, Taliban say, okay, you know what? That's it. You have enough time to evacuate your people. But what if there is still American people on the soil? What the Taliban gonna do with these people? Are they gonna keep them as a political prisoners or whatever, military prisoner? What's that scenario? I don't know if you see what I'm kind of coming
Yeah, I
from.
do. I think that CIA Director Burns probably brought that up with a lot of different scenarios that could possibly, and things that we haven't even articulated or the public has been aware of. I believe that they were probably giving the message, the Taliban, that if any innocent Americans are killed after the 31st, that there will be consequences. I can't say that. I don't have intimate knowledge, but knowing the rhythm of this, they're not going to let Americans stranded out there die needlessly, particularly those who are attempting to leave. Now, those who want to come back and do whatever other things, that's a whole different. But if you're actually an American trying to leave, and you, for some reason the 31st comes and goes and you're still trapped, I think that the Taliban will be wise to not have any videos that, like we saw a few years back, in which Americans are the stars and unfortunately executed on tape. And so I think the message was delivered to them clearly. Don't mess with Americans after the 31st. They may need more time, but at least they're en route and they're respecting the deadline.
That would be correct, yes, that there would need to be time to wind down the presence. I will note, though, that the purpose of this statement is to provide additional context of what the president conveyed to the G7, which includes a number of very key components as he assesses day by day. And that includes the threat of ISIS, which is of great concern, understandably, to the president, given the threat it poses to our military who are on the ground, serving proudly and bravely on the ground. It also includes the essential aspect of having the Taliban's coordination continue over the coming days so we can facilitate as many people as we've been getting out.
And so what I read from this statement is he has not ruled out extending the deadline. Is that right?
Well, he asked for contingency plans, but believes we continue to be on track to accomplish our mission.
And one more question, Jen. Sorry, I know it's 30. Does this mean if he does stand by this August 31st deadline that every single U.S. troop will be out of Afghanistan by August 31st?
Again, I will leave it to the Department of Defense to get into operational details. As you know, and as I've noted, he is meeting with his national security team every single day, often more than once a day, to continue to discuss. And as I noted also in this statement, he's asked for contingency plans. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Just to follow up on Amar's question, so are you saying that despite this threat by the Taliban to stop Afghans from boarding planes, that you're not seeing any slowdown in Afghans being able to get to the airport if they need to?
I'm conveying that what we have articulated is that Afghans, not every, there are millions of Afghans, as we know, who want to leave the country, or a large number of Afghans who want to leave the country. I think that's safe to say. What I'm talking about is the individuals we have prioritized, those who have fought alongside us, who are eligible for special immigrant visas, who otherwise we are facilitating their departure, and that our expectation is that they will be able to reach the airport.
So I'm just trying to figure out if the Taliban has made good on this threat yet, and it sounds like you're saying they haven't.
I don't have an update on that. I'm just conveying to you what our expectation is and what we are continuing to communicate directly.
And then is this
So, do you think is in the best interest of the Taliban to do the right thing? Because the way I see it right now is that, you stay tight on whatever date you want us to leave. But if you're not helping to make the process smooth or make things happen smoothly, I think you're putting yourself in a situation where, if it comes to bring American home, we're gonna do anything, but we're gonna do everything to our power to bring them back, and that is really the option that I keep pushing you to tell me what possibly could happen if they say, okay, you know what, nobody get out of our country. And we know that we still have our friends and our allies and the American people on the soil. So that is really, really a question that is really I'm trying to answer that to
Well,
that
well,
question.
well, whether for the American side, I'll be the first to admit I cannot and will not ever try to get inside the mind of a Taliban spokesperson or a Taliban terrorist. That's beyond my skill set and beyond my intellectual capacity. I will say, though, that I hope that President Biden and the G7 folks who are out there, whom he's met, will continue to bring this chaos into some semblance of order, because every time you see on the screens of televisions around the world is a day that Americans are losing political currency and standing, much of which we lost in large quantities over the last 4 years. So let's not lose any more, realizing that this is a very fluid situation. You try to game out different outcomes, but even those outcomes still may not unfold what the real reality will be. And so I wish President Biden the best. I hope that Jake Sullivan, his national security advisor, the best. William Burns, the CIA director, the best. And Lloyd Austin, who should not be the fall guy in this. I wish them all the very best. I am rooting for America for success in Afghanistan.
CIA director, now the chief negotiator for the U.S. in Kabul, and how long does he plan to stay there?
I certainly understand your question. I'd refer you to the CIA on any specific questions about his location or specific role. Go ahead.
For a little bit of clarity, because minutes and hours matter here. Into the 31st, when exactly is the deadline as it currently exists?
It's really a great question, and I want to give you a very clear and articulate answer from the team on the ground, so I'll just have to get back to you on that to make sure we give you the accurate information.
What is the last, I know you're continuing to do this actively,
Yeah.
as you indicated to one of my colleagues a moment ago, obviously. There's going to be time needed to be able to get out the American troops and others who are helping facilitate this process. What is the last call for Americans on the ground there to come to the airport at Kabul?
We are in touch with Americans directly, and we have contact with, and I can give you an overall assessment of where we stand with that, if that's helpful as well.
So when she said the White House have a contact with American directly, is it just all Americans, or this is the people that work for the embassy? And
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, are they calling them? Are they in contact with what? Cell phones, or what's going on here? What's your assessment on that?
Yeah, maybe emails, maybe through family, maybe through third parties. I'm sure it is essential personnel from the embassies and their families, and perhaps regular Americans. But you have to, let's be real. I think anytime you have individuals who are representative of the government of the United States overseas, they're given certain kind of priority that private citizens and or tourists, albeit I'm not sure how many tourists are hanging out in Afghanistan right now, they're probably given more priority. Not saying that's right or wrong. That's just the politics of life.
Yeah, but it seems to me that if you have some kind of a clear number of how many people we have on the ground to be lifted, then it should be a little bit easier to make some plan. If you have 1,000 people left, and we're not doing this ourselves, there's some plan from Italy. That's what I was talking about. I was asking you earlier about our friend and allies, from Israel. Israel, yep. the Saudi Arabia, they're closer to that part of the world than anybody else. Those are our closest ally in the Middle East. What are they doing? And if the press secretary say, okay, they've been in contact with these people, or with the American people, so we should have a clear assessment on how can we, use everything to our disposal to bring these people home.
And I wouldn't equate not hearing about Israel or the Saudis or Qatar, not hearing about them publicly, don't discount what they may or may not be doing behind the scenes. Because as you know, sometimes the most effective diplomacy takes place outside, the view of a camera or a microphone. So I'm going to reserve judgment. I hope that the Israelis and the Saudis and those from that part of the world are stepping up to help, because this is where your true friends come in, when you see that you're right now in free fall. And make no mistake, the United States is in free fall as it relates to the situation in Afghanistan, but we're ready to bounce back when appropriate. And I'm optimistic.
But I'm not going to give.
Right. Finish your statement.
We will. And I wish Jen Psaki all the best as she fields these questions that are really aimed at the president, but she's doing her best to answer. But this is not a time to obfuscate. Be direct with the American people. Let them know what's going on, and let them know what's the reason. Yeah. No time.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
You more of an articulation of that from here.
Are there any active threats? You talked about in that statement the threat that's posed by ISIS-K, but are there any active threats to Kabul, to HK right now?
I'm not going to give you an intelligence assessment from here either, but I can convey to you that we have increasing concerns about the threats, and that is certainly a part of the president's assessment and decision making. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. Is there any concern that maybe trying to reach this deadline and get everybody out, mistakes are being made now that there is a report that at least one of the Afghans evacuated to Qatar has suspected ISIS ties?
Well, first I would say we have a stringent vetting process, which includes background checks before any individual comes to the United States. So I can't speak to one individual, but I can tell you and confirm for you that we take the vetting of any individual who comes to the United States and comes out incredibly seriously. And it's an extensive process. I would say that this is now on track, Peter, to be the largest airlift in U.S. history. And that is bringing American citizens out. It is bringing our Afghan partners out. It is bringing allies out. So no, I would not say that is anything but a success.
Okay, and I know that you said yesterday it's irresponsible to say that Americans are stranded in Afghanistan right now. What do you say to the American citizen in Kabul that Fox spoke to this morning? Her name is, she's going by Fatima. She says, we are stranded at home. For 4 days, 3 days, we didn't hear anything from anywhere, and they're saying to go to the airport, but we're not being given clear guidance. Our emails are getting ignored.
Well,
So I know the demonstration, trying to be a little bit, not to use language that don't create panic in the head of not only people here at home, but also those abroad. But I think it's also fair to understand that in this kind of situation, there will be some patience to be asked, because if you go to any administrative office, you're gonna have a line, and this is in the time of peace. You're gonna have a line where you've got to respect the time and the people in front of you. Now, if you're in a situation, a chaotic situation like the one that we have, and people complaining about, I've been here 3 hours. Of course, it's going to be 3 hours. And this is not an easy task. And again, the ladies is talking about, the press secretary is talking about the biggest airlift in the history of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
So that is not an easy job to do.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to ask about patience when you're sitting in the press room of the White House. But I think that people will demonstrate whether they have to sit in line for 3 hours, 13 hours, 23 hours, or 33 hours. I think if there is a flight which will guarantee them safety and a better future than Afghanistan, I think they'll wait there all week in line without any water, as is the case in some lines in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like most of these people will first go to, I think, military bases across the world where American have the base, right?
Yeah, I think Guam is one area they're talking about. Guam might be a place to process them, but that's still up for debate. But I hope that they'll be able to receive the benefit of the American people as well as the American government, and that I'm anxious to see what Afghan students 10, 15 years down the road will be the inventor of something that will help cure ailments affecting all humanity. Because they're there. There's one or two there among all those who are right now frightened and uncertain as to their future.
Absolutely.
don't I convey to you exactly what we are doing? And I think what's important to note that I also said yesterday, in the full context of my answer, which I put out today, was that we are committed to bringing Americans home who want to leave. And that is the president's commitment. So let me explain to you how our process.
That is the sentence that I've been, this the government official been saying. We are committed to bring people home, people who want to come home. Do you think at this point in time, any American can decide, you know what? Well, I'm good here. I'm gonna stay with. I'm gonna deal with the Taliban.
Yeah.
You think that there will be any American that think that way?
Yeah, and not only that, more importantly, even the ones who want to change, they still have to deal with the Taliban. They have to deal with the Taliban if they want to leave. They have to deal with the Taliban if they have to stay. So it sounds to me like a trick bag. But in the end, all kidding aside, I think that I feel confident the Americans that are remaining will eventually be able to leave. I just hope that we don't forget about the Afghani men, women, and children, some of whose family members helped as interpreters and other entities, that we ever do not forget them nor abandon them.
Yeah, I mean, on that, I think we can count on the president. This is a personal to him,
Yes, very much so.
This somebody who's happened to be a father of men. Is of course that his son is no longer here, but this man served this country, and he understand that those who fight alongside with American deserve to be protected, deserve to be helped, and I don't believe that President Biden will leave anybody behind, especially, let me use the demonstrating term, especially those who want to come. I think they're all gonna leave Afghanistan.
Works, and there have been some very good questions, including from you and from others, about this. One, as we've said, this is a dynamic number. We're working hour by hour to refine and make it precise. Understand your desire and interest in having exact number of American citizens on the ground, and the State Department, I expect, will have an exact update on that tomorrow. Just to remind you, the U.S. government does not track our citizens when they travel around the world. We rely on self-reporting, not just in Afghanistan, anywhere in the world. People have to decide to register or not. It's up to them, individuals, whether they decide to register or not, wherever they may be. And if you register when you're in a country like Afghanistan, you aren't required to deregister. The State Department also issues alerts. They have publicized phone number and email to contact if you're in Afghanistan and want assistance to leave. And for months, the department has been telling Americans to leave Afghanistan for their own safety. It is our responsibility and our role to work with and help American citizens who want to leave. Let me finish. I'm almost done, and then you can ask a follow-up question. In recent days, they have reached out to every American citizen registered in Afghanistan directly multiple times. This is a 24/7 operation. Embassies all over the world are supporting phone banking, text banking, and email efforts. If we are not in touch with this individual, give me their contact information and we will get in touch with them. If any of you are hearing from American citizens who can't reach us, give me their contact information and we will get in contact with them. Our estimate of the overall number of American citizens who are there can increase because folks are just now responding to our outreach who may not have registered. It can also decrease because people leave, they don't tell us they leave, or individuals who may reach out and convey they have the documentation needed, don't. So there are a range of factors here, and it's our responsibility to give you accurate information.
So, it's clear, I believe if you still have a friend in Afghanistan, I think it will be up to you to make sure that his information is known to the American, so that if you want to come back home, it will be airlift. Because the lady, the press secretary is clear on that. I mean,
if you have the number, give her the number and she'll contact you directly. So this is obviously an intense situation, and they need to have as many different streams of information gathering as possible, because no one wants to hear of stories of Americans imprisoned or tortured. And I know that the press secretary did her best to convey that message that we're here, give us your number, and we'll try to find you and work with you and get you out of that situation.
Absolutely. listen, it's a lot. To this press secretary information, I think the question are very solid. They're important, and through those questions, we usually have a clear understanding of the situation. That's why I think it was important for you and me to kind of give our point of view, our perspective on what's going on. And just to remind the people that this war, I mean, our presence in Afghanistan, this is not a Joe Biden's story. And the story started there's at least 3 presidents before him. Started with George Bush, then Donald Trump, after Donald Trump, Barack Obama, and then Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden. So it's been a 3 generation in the making when it comes to creating the situation we have today. So we have to keep that in mind when we are pointing fingers, because America is the greatest country on earth. That's why we always deal with bigger issues like this one. I'll let you give your last statement so that we can leave from this show. I know I've been keeping you a little bit longer than before.
It's okay. No, all I can say is that God bless America for what they're doing in Afghanistan. I hope the allies will be able to step up and help. I hope the Taliban will do their best to exercise restraint and not exacerbate the situation. It's also a public relations campaign for them too, to appear as if they're telling the Americans what they can do. They say it's our country. You guys have been in for 20 years. We have it back. But I hope when all is said and done that the bad actors will not be engaged in bad activities, and that the good people of the United States of America will always know that that they can count on their government to help them anywhere in the world, whether in Afghanistan, Gabon, or Equatorial Guinea.
Help is on the way. Okay, my friend, my brother, we're gonna leave that right there. I look forward to speak with you probably tomorrow. You and me is every day, all day.
All day long.
All day long.
Politics never sleep.
Never sleep, my brother. Okay, my friend. So look forward to speak with you another time.
And support Malik. Support Gain TV. People out there listening, all of you out there listening, support him. He's a good man, and this provides a great public service for those of us who may not always get to be on some of the other avenues. This is going to be a phenomenal news outlet in the coming weeks, months, and years. Mark my words.
Thank you so much, my friend. Look forward to, and then thank you for those who tune in, who always come in and trying to listen to our analysis on what's going on around us. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.